evening and a warm welcome to all for today's session. We will be starting the session at 5 p.m. sharp. Thank you. Good evening to all. I, CA Sindhu Menon, on behalf of the Department of Accountancy of Nagindas Khandwala College, extend a warm welcome to all for today's event. We start the program with our college anthem. I request our IT team to please play the college anthem.
जग में कीर्ति कमा सकूं।
मैं बनूं इंसान अच्छा, जग में कीर्ति कमा सकूं।
भारत भविष्य बना सकूं, भारत भविष्य बना सकूं।
Thank you, Jimit. We are indeed honored to have with us today our respected Principal Madam Dr. Mrs. Ansi Jose, Vice Principals of Degree College Mr. Vijay Suchak and Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta, Vice Principal of Self-Finance Section Dr. Mona Mehta, Adjunct Professor CA Dr. Varsha Ainapure, and of course our guest for today's session Dr. Abhijit Phadnis. The Union Budget 2021-22 was not an ordinary one. It had to bear a unique burden of the expectations to put India back on the recovery path after a deep recession induced by COVID-19 and the resultant lockdowns. Hence, all eyes and ears were glued to the screens on February 1st when Honorable Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the budget in the Parliament. And today we have with us our expert speaker, Dr. Abhijit Phadnis, who will decode the budget for us. We look forward to Sir's in-depth analysis and insights into how the budget proposals would impact us, the common people, and also his vision for the next decade. I request the head of the Department of Accountancy, CA Harish Godia, to welcome our dignitaries for today.
Namaskar. It's indeed a proud privilege for me and my Department of Accountancy to welcome Dr. Abhijit Phadnis in this today's session, Budget 2021, a vision for the next decade. When I talk about budget, it takes me to a nostalgic thing of past when I, as a student, used to go all the way to CCI Churchgate to listen to Sri Nani Palkhiwala. And years and years thereon, after completing CA and all, we always used to cherish that day of budget. And in the first week, it used to come in the month of February end, 28th or 29th of February. And first week of February, we all, in the March, we used to go and attend this session of Sri Nani Palkhiwala. Of course, I am confident Dr. Abhijit Phadnis will do equal justice when we talk about, but then the limited time that we have at our disposal, I am sure Sir will do justice to this. Sir, it is indeed my proud privilege to welcome you in this budget session and look forward to listen to you. We are all excited. I got a lot of queries from my colleagues, my friends, and we are all eagerly waiting for your talk for the session today. Thank you, and looking forward to a budget of a century. That is what Dr. Nirmala told us, and looking to the 9.5 ranking out of 10 given by the market, soaring from 46,000 to 50,000, and everybody talk about 1 lakh reaching in no time, and so on and so forth. So we are eagerly waiting to understand from your angle, and welcome you, sir, to this session. Over to Sindhu, madam.
Thank you, sir. We are glad to have with us today Adjunct Professor CA Dr. Varsha Ainapure, whose efforts enabled us to get such a dynamic and expert speaker for today's session. Ma'am has been a constant guide and support for us in conducting various activities of our department, and for that we are truly grateful. I request Varsha Ainapure ma'am to share a few thoughts with us today.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be with all of you this evening. We know we are, as a college, as an institution, what our students represent us for. We take every effort to see that our students do the best and we help them to perform their best. I would like to share some of the things for our chief guest to tell everybody about what we take so much pride in. Because we are autonomous, we have done quite a few things on our own for our students. Curriculum is in our hands. The idea of giving them best is what motivates us all. What distinguishes us from other colleges is we make our commerce students compulsorily learn Tally ERP9 and we also train them for Excel. After doing this, we also arrange a placement drive for our students. This is for the UG. For PG students, ours must be the only college. We have introduced IFRS for the students. We want our industry to understand students coming from Khandwala College are different. They are more developed, more knowledge driven from other students. This arranging a program is also one such event, and I was very glad to recommend the name of the chief guest for this program. Dear students, you should have a goal in front of you to be as knowledgeable as him, to be an expert like him, and to be as modest as him. All the best to the Department of Accountancy for arranging this program, and all the best to the speaker for going ahead with this. Thank you so much. Back to you, Sindhu.
Thank you, ma'am. Our dynamic Vice Principal, Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta, wears so many hats that I'm sure all of us have lost count. Her zest for work and her drive to achieve excellence, coupled with her vibrant personality, make her an icon to look up to. I request Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta to speak a few words about our college today.
Thank you, Sindhu. Good evening to the speaker of today, dignitaries, Madam Principal, Vice Principal of Degree College, as well as hello.
Moshmi, ma'am.
I think she lost connection.
Okay.
And ma'am, I don't know, but whether everybody is getting, I am getting tremendous echo sound here.
No, I'm not getting. It's okay with me.
ऐनापुरा मैडम आपका YouTube का कनेक्शन बंद कर दीजिए.
Okay.
दोनों साथ में रखेंगे ना तो आएगा.
Oh.
We'll wait for Moshmi ma'am to join us again.
You go ahead, Sindhu.
Okay. Okay.
I think I'm not getting Moshmi. I was trying.
कर रही हूँ, हाँ.
Okay. Dr.
Okay.
Moshmi Datta is facing some network issues, so we can continue. She will join us back as soon as she gets through. Our Vice Principal, Mr. Vijay Suchak, has always been gracious enough to support us in all our activities. I'm sure that because of his keen interest in the stock market and the government policies, Sir must have already done his own analysis of the budget and must be looking forward to compare notes with our guest speaker today. I request Suchak Sir to please address the gathering.
Thank you, Sindhu ma'am. Good evening, respected Madam Principal, my Vice Principal colleagues, Adjunct Professor Dr. Varsha Ainapure Madam, our Chief Guest Abhijit Fadnis ji sir, Head of the department, CA Harish Godia, all other members of accountancy department, all other faculty members, and dear student participants. At the outset, let me compliment the accountancy department for showing initiative in organizing such a wonderful guest lecture on budget 2021. I concur with you, CA Harish Godia. Earlier budget used to be presented on the last working day of February, which this government has preponed it almost by a month for reasons, giving people ample time. When I say people, it includes everyone, to understand, to study, to understand, and to find out the nitty-gritty of the budget. I still join you in saying that yes, I also, though I was not doing CA, but I was also one of the interested parties to go to CCI and Bremont Club to listen to the great Nani Palkhiwala in those days, because this kind of live presentation was not there in those days. Even his successor, Mr. H.P. Ranina, also is no less speaker, highly learned person, but he does it on the same evening now. With the help of technology, things have become easy. And he does not address because people don't go in that number. But in a small auditorium, he still organizes on behalf of the Forum of Free Enterprise. And sometimes we have taken our students also to listen to his talks. For a layman like me, I prefer reading about the budget the next day in the paper rather than watching the live telecast. There must be something in this budget, especially, Sindhu madam, when you said about the introductory part, I'm not repeating, but there must be something in this budget, because in last around 20 years on the day of the presentation of the budget, Sensex and Nifty have not risen barring 3 occasions, including this one. And not only it has risen, Sensex was almost 2,500 points up on the very same day, and it has risen for the next 4 days. It is said about Sensex कि इतना सेंसिटिव इंडेक्स है वो कि अमेरिकन प्रेसिडेंट को छींक आती है ना तो उसका भी वो यहाँ सेंसेक्स के ऊपर मॉनिटरिंग होता है, इतना सेंसिटिव है. एक जरा सा न्यूज पॉजिटिव आ गया, करंट आ जाते हैं, जरा सा न्यूज नेगेटिव आ गया, इसके ऊपर गिरावट आ जाती है, इतना सेंसिटिव इंडेक्स है बोथ. तो 5 दिन तक कंटिन्यूअसली बढ़ना, आज सैटरडे नहीं तो पता नहीं क्या होता था, तो कुछ तो होएगा अच्छा. एंड पूरा साल का पेंडेमिक के बाद, ये खराब सिचुएशन के बाद जब भी गवर्नमेंट ने इतना अच्छा बजट दिया है, दैट इज व्हाट पीपल आर सेइंग. सो इवन आई आल्सो एम वेरी कीनली लुकिंग टू Abhijit sir ji to analyze the budget proposals to us. Sir, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Because of the internet problem, we had to do this zigzag, and Moshmi Datta madam will rejoin us in telling about some of the great things about this college, which many of you, including you, may not be aware of. So, Harish Godia and Sindhu Menon madam, thank you very much for allowing me to share some of my thoughts about this. Thank you. Back to you, Sindhu madam.
Thank you so much, sir. It's always a pleasure listening to you. A visionary, an achiever, and an inspiration. Our principal, Dr. Mrs. Ansi Jose, is all this and more. She is the motivator as well as the driving force behind all our endeavors. She has pushed us to achieve greater heights of excellence, and we have always strived to live up to her expectations. We are honored to have her amidst us today and look forward to hear her speak. I now request our principal, Madam Dr. Mrs. Ansi Jose, to speak a few words of encouragement for all of us. Ma'am, madam, you're not audible, madam. Ma'am, you can try leaving the meeting and joining again.
Sindhu, madam is doing that.
Yes, yes.
We'll wait for a while for her.
Yes, ma'am. Dear participants, we request you to kindly wait till our principal madam joins us again.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah. I mean, this is what the technology gives us, at times when the things are very important, you are asked to stop a little bit and then go. Good evening, everyone. My vice principal colleagues, Professor Suchak, Mona Mehta, and Maushmi, the organizers, the Department of Accountancy under the leadership of CA Haresh Godia, and nurtured by CA Dr. Varsha Ainabre. And today is our chief guest, Dr. Abhijit Fadnis, and my dear faculty members and dear students. It's really very interesting to listen to the budget after the budget is presented, and especially when Sujak sir has already mentioned continuous 4 days Sensex index is going up. I don't have much knowledge about all these things. My knowledge is very, very limited, which I never tried to learn that particular aspect because that's not my forte. That's not my interesting. But it is always a passion to listen to the people, who can guide us through this budget presentation. Um, Sir, I think on behalf of my management, let me extend a warm welcome to you for this program. Khandwala College always strives to reach to the maximum. Whatever we can do, maybe it is a small thing, but do it in the best possible way. That is our motto, that is our planning. That's how we, the entire team of faculty members, that is the faculty members of aided section as well as unaided section, we worked to make our Khandwala College one of the best colleges. And I'm really proud that that push I got is through my faculty members. They always say, ma'am, what we can do next, what we can do next, how can we achieve more. So they also push me a lot, and I also push them together a lot. I mean, we together each other push us to make our Khandwala College a better one. I'm very happy to say that more. I think quite a good number of students are always doing CA from our college. I can say that definitely around 40% of the students are registered for CA. Quite a good number completes also. When I have gone through your biodata, sir, I was 2 minutes, I was speechless. I just I was doing an introspection. Wow, it is a wow factor which you have, all rank CA, CS, CFA, CMA, and all rank holder. I mean, all rank holding. It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't have words to express and congratulate you at this juncture, and even a PhD from IIT. It's your passion for learning is observed from that. I think my students who are hearing him and who is hearing his biodata should develop that passion that, you can make him as your role model, how a person can achieve the maximum. It was something amazing. I was talking about our college, sir. I mean, even though it was pandemic, you would be surprised my faculty members and students altogether conducted 166 webinars on recent topics. All departments, every section is competing with each other. Every convener is competing with each other to arrange more and more program. I was just making a report because I have to present the report, tomorrow with the managing committee. So I was preparing the report. There I came to know the total number of webinars we conducted in the pandemic year from April to December. It is 166. It is an amazing. In between, we had to conduct the sessions, we had to conduct the, complete the syllabus, conduct the exam, all the activities of the college. But we never took a back seat in organizing the program for the students, because we believe in the all-round development of the students, and all-round development happens when we have, along with the curricular activities, we arrange co-curricular and extracurricular activity, and we really believe in that. So from the journey of our college started from 83, and from 83 to 2021, when I look back, I feel so really satisfied looking at the growth of the institution. When I say satisfied, I cannot be, when I say satisfied, it is with that. I'm not stagnant. We never allow the institution to be stagnant. In fact, you would be surprised, even in this pandemic time, we have started 6 new programs. New programs, because we are autonomous, we can start new programs. We don't have to go through the hurdle of going to university, government permission, etc. We are authorized to start the programs. So we never waited that a pandemic year, whether the students will join, whether we get students. It's okay if we get less students, it's okay, but we need to go ahead. We cannot take back, and we cannot be in the comfort zone. The moment we are in the comfort zone, your decline begins. So we never want to be in the comfort zone. And all related job, or in fact, we are creating the programs which are entrepreneurship oriented rather than job seeking. We don't want to create more people to be job seekers, but we want them to be entrepreneurs. So, in joining hands with the Prime Minister Modi's national education policy, we want to grow accordingly. We want to create entrepreneurs. So such type of programs we have started in our college. And in pandemic year, we have started 6. And of course, we have in lined up with so many other programs for next few years. I mean, it's how we are planning, we are working. And that is happening only because, any success story of any institution or any organization, it is a teamwork. When it is a teamwork of the students join with hands with us to give us the support of what is required to be done, etc. The students are also very actively involved in all our activities. So the entire faculty and entire student community, together we work, and we suggest proposal to our management, and we have a humble management who always gives us permission to go ahead. Whatever we suggest to them, you can always go ahead. That's what the support we are getting from the management, and that's what, when we can grow. Otherwise, it is very difficult to grow. So it is about the institution. We are still striving to be successful. We are successful, but we want to be excellent, doing excellent in whatever area we are choosing, and we are taking it up. That is um, about the college. In fact, this budget is very, very very passionate subject for all commerce students. I'm sure about it. But especially Mumbaites, I can say that budget is a very, very passionate subject. They look forward to listen to people. Nani Palkiwala was a great person. I think lakhs and lakhs of people used to come together to listen to his talk. Now, because of the technology, people can listen at sitting at home. Earlier, we had to travel to Churchgate, to the Wangde Stadium to listen to that. But now everybody looking at, everybody sitting in front of their, maybe in the, hall, in front of your laptop, or, you can listen and you can understand. That is the advantage of technology that we have learned even now in pandemic, Otherwise, we had to use the chalk and board. Now we have the blended mode, flipped classroom, online teaching, everything, the technology. We had to adapt to the technology. And today we are here to listen to you, Dr. Abhijit, for, through the technology, we are here to listen to you. So on behalf of the management, on behalf of all of us, let me also extend a warm welcome to you for this program. And once again, let me congratulate the accountancy department for the wonderful thought and for arranging this program. I think I must compliment Dr. Varsha, CA Varsha Enabre, who is such a committed person for, for the development of the accountancy department as well as the development of the college. She is helping me in a great way for the development of the college. So thank you, Dr. Varsha, for helping me. And I congratulate each and everyone for this wonderful program, and looking forward to listen to you, Dr. Abhijit. Over to you, Sindhu.
Thank you, ma'am. I would also like to add, for the benefit of the participants and for the benefit of Dr. Abhijit Fadnis, that our college is NAC re-accredited with CGPA 3.32. It is ISO 9001:2015 certified. It has been awarded as the best college in Mumbai University. It has also been ranked 5th in Maharashtra and 33rd in India by Education Forum. Our guest for today, Dr. Abhijit Fadnis, is a man of many talents. His achievements are so remarkable and his interests so varied that I will fall short of words which do him complete justice. I therefore request CA Dr. Reena Desai, our senior colleague in the Department of Accountancy, to do the honors and introduce our guest, Dr. Abhijit Fadnis.
Thank you, Sindhu. Good evening, everyone. I'm extremely delighted to introduce the distinguished speaker for today's talk on Budget 2021, a vision for the next decade. Dr. Abhijit Fadnis, Director of Gildage Financial Council Private Limited, is a renowned, multi-talented professional having a brilliant academic career. Dr. Abhijit Fadnis is a national rank holder in all the professional courses he pursued. His All India ranks are first in CS, second in CMA, third in CFA India, and 11th in CA. He was awarded PhD degree by Indian Institute of Technology IIT Bombay in 2009. In his corporate career since 1983, he has worked for organizations such as Johnson & Johnson, UBS, and Credit Suisse, and also served on the boards of local subsidiaries of UBS and Credit Suisse. He has been teaching since 1985 and has delivered over 350 corporate workshops for over 70 companies and has participated in various consulting projects for over 15 companies. He helped IIT Bombay in launching 2 new unique initiatives, including a joint degree MBA program with an American university. He has created YouTube channels in English and Marathi, which has 1,300 plus subscribers, where he has been creating educational videos on finance, investing in a simple. He does it in a language which is simple to understand. Over and above, he has written a series of 49 episodes to teach accounting, costing, and finance concepts, which has been animated, and the product has been rolled out by 20 companies for their employees. The theory is that people are either left brain or right brain. meaning that one side of their brain is dominant. If you are mostly analytical and methodical in your thinking, you are said to be left-brained. If you tend to be more creative, artistic, intuitive, you are thought to be right-brained. Very few have left and right brains equally dominant. Dr. Abhijit Farnis is one such rare genius who is blessed with a perfect blend of both. Sir writes poetry in English. His 65 stanza Marathi poem on the message of Bhagavad Gita is also available on his YouTube channel and is a must watch. He is a passionate singer and sings Hindi film songs which are also available on his YouTube channel. He has completed a 2-month long acting workshop with Ashok Kumar Academy of Dramatic Arts and also completed a course in voice culture. Sir has left no stone unturned. Besides his academic and literary contributions, he is inclined to sports as well. Sir is a swimmer. He is into kite flying and is also a passionate cricketer. He is a left-arm spin bowler and bowls a variety of deliveries including orthodox, armour and leg spin. Many of you might not know, but in 2014, Sir has taken a hat-trick by having 3 batsmen clean bowl in a row. It's a privilege for all of us to have such an outstanding personality with us today, and I'm sure that it's going to be a very insightful, interesting, and informative session for all eager ears. With this, I request Dr. Abhijit Padnis to take over. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Reena ma'am. So Professor Ansi Jose, Principal of the College, Professor Haresh Gudia, HOD Accountancy, Professor Maushumi, Professor Vijay Suchakji, Professor Mona Mehta, Vice Principals of the College, Professor Varsha Ainapure, Adjunct Faculty who kindly introduced me to the college, Professor Reena who has been coordinating with me all along and she's been very, very efficient in doing so, Professor Sindhu for wonderful comparing, and the entire IT team which has made this event possible. When I was listening to all of you as well as when I listened to the college anthem, it actually gave me goosebumps. It was so fascinating to know that all the faculty members are putting their best in very difficult circumstances to keep the flag of the college high. It wonderfully speaks about the team spirit that you have and in your leadership, which has actually cultivated the talent across in the college and got people involved. I was very, very fascinated to listen to the college anthem, which clearly indicated that you are here in building people's lives, give them the great base samskars which are possible, as well as give them the real purpose of life. I'm very happy when Principal Ansi mentioned that you're not here to create job seekers, but you are here to create job givers. So it was absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Rinaji, for a very kind and generous introduction. And I must also tell the students, because I understand a lot of students are participating in this. And while all my achievements have been talked about as a part of my introduction, I must tell you that I have gone through many failures. To name a few, I have been introduced as a rank holder in every exam that I've appeared, which is true. But I began my career with a failure in CA entrance exam. You'll be shocked to know, but that's really true. I came from a Marathi school, so I was not able to speak. I participated the first time in an elocution competition in the college. The only thing I did was I stood up and sat down. I couldn't even utter a sentence. Today, I run workshops for leadership teams of companies. So the point is that one can get over any obstacles, any failures, and progress. So those of you who understand Marathi, I have actually created on my Marathi channel, Dr. Abhijit Marathi channel, an entire series of my failures and how I have sprung up from them. I continue to play cricket, but I had very difficult days. When I again started playing cricket and I was not able to bowl what is the speciality of a left arm spin bowler, which is the orthodox spin, which every left armer bowls. And I was not able to get it for 3 years. I struggled and got it back. So there are obstacles. I was very happy to listen to Vijayji, who is a passionate stock market buff. And I was a complete failure the first time I invested in stock market during the Lehman Brothers crisis, I wiped out half of my wealth. But I did not run away from the markets. I analyzed my mistakes. And today I engage people on how to invest. And I must tell Vijayji that I'm 90% of my savings are in stock market today. So I was very happy, obviously, with the budget. So to that extent, I have a bit of a bias. But indeed, I think the budget was a fascinating budget. And I was actually listening to the budget, sitting in the studios of Doordarshan Marathi channel. And then again, I was there for 2.5 hours, providing the commentary on the budget and a part of the discussion. So with that, I would like to share my presentation. I don't have too many slides, but I think the content I'll put my best effort to captivate and give insights to the audience. With your permission, now I'll share my screen. And Rinaji, kindly confirm that you're able to see the screen so that I can go ahead confidently.
Yes, sir.
Are
Sir,
you
we
able to
can
see
see the screen. Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Perfect, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And as I open my conversation and my presentation, I was, particularly, excited with the college anthem, because it kind of, is going to link with my very first slide. So when I talk about what can be a better motto than what I'm going to present to you for a statesman, or for a nation, or for all of us, than the story of one of the ancient kings belonging to this ancient nation called as Raja Rantidev, who happened to be in this part of the world over 7,500 years ago. And he was known to be an extremely generous king. And he expressed his motto in one simple verse. And it reads as follows. And that's where I saw an echo of this sentiment in your college anthem. And therefore, I'm very excited about it. He said, Na tvaham kamaye rajyam, na swargam, na punarbhavam, kamaye dukkha taptanam, praninam arti nashanam. What does that mean? Raja Rantideva said, I don't aspire for a kingdom. I don't aspire for power. I don't aspire for heaven. Neither do I aspire for reincarnation. All that I aspire for is that anybody who is dukkha tapta, which means that anybody who is facing sorrow, if I can do something to remove the sorrow from his life. So any prani means not only a human being, but anybody who has life force in it. If I can remove his arti, which is the unhappiness or sorrow, I think that is the biggest motto I can have in my life. And in fact, I had written down these words on the wall of my, one of my rooms. It got cleaned up because of the recent painting that happened, but I'm going to rewrite again, because there can't be bigger motto than any of us in our life is to actually contribute in a very meaningful way. And that sentiment I could actually find in your college anthem, which was very, very exciting. So basically, let me now share with you in the next slide some of the thought process that I have been able to visualize and as I've been able to see, which has been unfolded as some of the few convictions of the current government, even before this budget was presented. And those convictions are in action for the last several years, and they have been visible in action. And I find that they were quite visible in this budget also. And therefore, it's important to quickly run through them so that we are able to link up what happened in this budget with some of that background. So the first and foremost is, as the government has been talking about, Sabka Saath and Sabka Vikas. So everybody who is at the bottom of the pyramid must be helped, irrespective of the community, the background that the person comes from. And that should be the priority of any government, as I just presented in the earlier slide, that anybody who is going through difficulties, the first responsibility of a government is to help those people. And that's why we see that number of initiatives have been rolled out, whether it is housing for all, or whether it is electricity for all, or whether it is the road construction, which has reached out to villages and villages, gas connections, And in fact, very interestingly, targeted subsidies being given even during this COVID pandemic. So you would be amused to know that what the economic survey gave this data, that 20 crore Janadhan accounts were funded with certain targeted amounts at the beginning of the pandemic. And who were these 20 crore beneficiaries? They were all women. So the government had the conviction that if you put the money in the hands of women, it will be used rightly. So they will take care of their families much better than if the men were to be given this money. So the government gave this targeted subsidy, targeted funding to a certain section of the society. So basically, the objective of the government is to reach out and help the poorest in our nation so that when they come up, we'll actually have in a decade a new middle class which will arise because they are all waiting for opportunities. They're extremely talented. It's only that they don't have the opportunity and they are under the burden of the legacy that they have received so far. But we need to help all of us, whether it's the government or us. And I think that's what your college is also trying to do, is to help people to become job givers rather than job seekers. And therefore, the objective is to help the society and create social and business enterprises around it. The second one is growth is the panacea for lifting our poor and marginalized from poverty. Of course, the previous governments have also tried to do their bit in terms of doing so. The Manrega scheme was exactly for this purpose. So essentially, whenever there is growth in the economy, that is the surest way that people can get opportunities and the poor can be lifted out of the current situation that they are in. And more the opportunities for people, more the development. So we get into a virtuous cycle in that sense. The third, which is something which is again echoed in this budget also, is the conviction of the government of minimum government and maximum governance. So what does that mean? When we talk about minimum government, it actually means that the government's role is to act as a referee, to act as a watchkeeper, and not to unnecessarily meddle and participate where it is not required to do so. If you create such a huge bureaucracy that starts meddling into every enterprise unnecessarily, which is what has happened in our bureaucracy, where the entire legacy of the colonial era of bureaucracy has continued in terms of mindset, and that mindset was to look at its own populace with suspicion instead of helping them to grow. So as an example, the Japanese government created an institution called as MITI. The purpose of MITI was to help one Japanese company from each sector to become world scale, right? So whether it was consumer electronics or whether it was shipbuilding or whether it was steel or whether it was automobiles, the Japanese government helped their companies to become big. Instead, in India, we had all kinds of controls on companies becoming big. Companies were being looked at with suspicion if somebody is becoming big. It was not being looked at with favor that companies are becoming big and they can become job creators and they can actually go out in the world and kind of reach out to customers and consumers around the world. But here we see clearly that the government is gradually withdrawing from spaces where it is convinced that it need not be, as far as it has the right framework to ensure that there is proper governance. So the idea for the government has been that be a referee and not a player. And that has been the background before the budget also. And we see a continuum of that in this budget. As your college is trying to do, and Principal Ansi also mentioned about that the government echoed the need for our youth to become entrepreneurs. And I'm very happy that your college is trying to do its bit in terms of creating this entrepreneurial spirit. And Indian entrepreneurial spirit has actually been phenomenal. Angus Madison, who made estimates about India's contribution to the world GDP, 300 years ago, 30% of the world GDP was contributed by India. And that was not only on the basis of agriculture, that was based on the industry of that era. So therefore, we have in it, within us, in our genes, to be entrepreneurs, right? So it's up to us to rekindle that spirit. and that can do wonders to the nation. So quite often it is argued that when there is growth, there are opportunities for people who are already rich, and therefore there would be a bigger disparity between the richer class and the poorer class. While it does happen that way, unfortunately, and we all need to put our hands together to not let that happen, but at the same time we must recognize that a lot of new entrepreneurs are not from rich classes. If you talk about many of these new enterprises which have been created, whether it is Flipkart or whether it is the recent Zerodha, and those who have become billionaires actually came from middle class background, right? So essentially it is also creating new opportunities for our new entrepreneurs. It's not only about creating opportunities for those who are already in business and helping big companies become bigger, though of course you see a lot of press talking about specific names, talking about, the government is trying to help XYZ. But the reality is that we also have, so much of entrepreneurial class which is getting generated. Just today morning, I was actually seeing, a discussion on one of the channels where the recent exhibition, the aerospace exhibition that is happening in Bengaluru, there was this video about what are the new generation aircrafts in that Tejas series which are going to come up in next 10 years. And it was heartening to know that unlike in the past, when Tejas took so much of time to get created, where the involvement was limited to a few enterprises, now there is a broad basing of several hundred private entrepreneurs, SMEs, who are working closely with the government agencies, whether it is HAL or whether it is DRDO, which are the government agencies, or whether it is ADA. But in addition to that, so many MSMEs are involved, and they are all contributing to the new platform of aircraft which are going to come from India, which are not only going to be the Tejas LCA-1 or 1A, but it's going to be a series of aircrafts which are going to be operational in next 10 years. And that involvement of entrepreneurs is going to rekindle a huge amount of spillover effect of defense manufacturing, which is going to happen in our country, right? At the same time, one of the things that this government has been doing is not to shy away from tough decisions if they're good for the long term. So there was a lot of criticism of demonetization. There was a lot of criticism of the haste in which GST got rolled out. And of course, there are pros and cons of both these decisions. But the fact is that the government went ahead with the conviction that they are good for the nation in the long term, though there is a short-term cost. And in the hindsight, we have been one of the fastest countries to roll out GST. So this is something which has been a hallmark of not only of the government, but the maturity of our people at large. Demonetization, people went through inconveniences, but they were convinced that there is a certain merit in the move that the government has taken, particularly not only because of black money, but the money which was, not the authentic money which was into the system, and the estimates were quite staggering at the government level. So the government had to take the tough decision. On the other hand, Venezuela rolled out similar demonetization, taking a clue from us. But within 7 days, they had to roll it back because there was so much of opposition in their country. So we also have a very mature population. We may have poverty in our country, but the maturity level of our population is amazingly high. The other thing which this government has consistently been doing is that it has tried to create measurable performances. I don't know how many of you of students have seen some of the websites of the government called as, one of the websites, I'll give you an example, vidyutpravaha.in is a website which is updated every 15 minutes. And it tells you the state of affairs of electricity availability all over the country, state-wise, the price at which electricity is trading, and so on and so forth. So there has to be a measurable performance. And even in this budget, we clearly could see targets in terms of by what date, by what month, there will be a rollout of piped drinking water, whether in rural areas or in the urban areas. How many more gas connections are going to be given, or what time period? And that has been continuously being communicated to the people at large, which is very good. The government is also convinced, though of course I'll come back to this specific budget in the context of the fiscal discipline or otherwise, which the government had to take a decision in the form of trade-off. But all along, the government was extremely careful and has been very careful about fiscal prudence. So what do you mean by fiscal prudence? Fiscal prudence means that essentially government also has sources of revenue and it also has expenditure. The government has to live within its own means. And if it extends too much in terms of expenditure, there is always a risk of the private sector getting crowded out because the deficit has to be financed out of borrowings. And if the government starts borrowing a lot of money, then the private sector can feel the pinch of it. So one of the things that the government has been trying to do is improve the quality of expenditure so that there is a certain fiscal prudence which is maintained. And late Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi ji had said that when the government spends 100 rupees, only 15 rupees go to the beneficiaries. But now, with what is called as the jam trinity, Janadhan, Aadhaar, and mobile phone, when they are linked together, the government is able to ensure that the benefits reach that destination seamlessly. They don't have to, there is no intermediation, there is no middleman, and the money can directly reach. That's how that Janadhan revolution that was done in 2015, when 41 crore new accounts were opened. During this pandemic, government could easily reach money to, as I said, to 20 crore beneficiaries who were women. In addition, money was sent to farmers, money was sent to, some of the elderly people who needed to be supported by the government, as well as the Divyang community. So there was a targeting which could be easily done based on the data. So this is something which is very important. The other realization has been that infrastructure is absolutely critical for economic progress. As it is said, America is constructed roads not because it was rich, but America became rich because it constructed roads. So essentially, we need to have very solid infrastructure, solid roads, airports, and there was a certain credit that we must give to the earlier UPA government, who also started revamping the airport infrastructure. But this momentum has been continued by this current government through its Udan Yojana, whereby many more airports have been activated so that people can easily reach out to different sectors, different geographies very, very easily, and that can promote tourism. The speed at which the infrastructure is getting developed, a completely new Mumbai-Delhi expressway is going to be ready in just 2 years' time, and it is going to be another road in addition to the existing road, and it is going to go through the remotest parts of our country, creating new opportunities in those regions as well. And in a short span of 4.5 years, this 1,200-kilometer long highway is getting constructed. So that is the pace at which the government has been investing in the infrastructure. We all know what happened with China, and why China has been perturbed is because of the border infrastructure that has been very aggressively created to defend our boundaries as well. And this is something which is vital. That has actually raised the stature of our country. When China got a lesson because of the bravery of our soldiers, it has actually raised the kind of stature of our country. Many other countries which have been bullied by China have become emboldened because of the sacrifice that our 20 soldiers have done for the sake of our nation. So that was something amazing. Another thing which has also happened and has been continuously happening is improved delivery mechanism, eliminate middlemen wherever possible. One example is the GEM portal. So basically, whenever the government, we all are familiar with the Amazon portal where we can place orders, but the government has also created a portal whereby all the government departments can actually buy from entrepreneurs directly through a very, very transparent system, and eliminating middlemen or eliminating corruption. So basically, there is a use of data. One can compare those prices with what is available on the other portals. So there is a lot of transparency to which we have been moving. The very important thing, and again, I'm going to come back to this a little later, is the need to build our manufacturing capability. We have already lost vital time. Yes, during colonization, our industry was destroyed. We all know, how the textile industry was destroyed in India, right? How our farmers were pushed into poverty. We all know that. But our nation was not rich only because of agriculture. Our nation was rich because of the seafaring that was being done. When Vasco da Gama came to India, it was not that he crossed the ocean on his own. It was an Indian vessel which piloted him, into India from Cape of Good Hope, right? So basically, we had our own capabilities. We had manufacturing capability, and that's how we were 30% of the world GDP in 1700. So can we not go back to that? But the route to that has to be through manufacturing. Just to give you an idea about Indian manufacturing versus Chinese manufacturing, uh, Chinese economy is about 5 times of India measured in current dollar and the currency parity, not based on purchasing power parity. From a purchasing power parity, we are bigger than what the dollar uh, measurement indicates. But let's go by the dollar measurement for now. So Chinese economy is 5 times India's size as of now, though it was China as a country was poorer than us 40 years ago, right? And on top of that, Chinese manufacturing forms 32% of China GDP. And in our case, it forms 16% of India GDP, with the result that Chinese manufacturing is 10 times of India manufacturing. So 5 times is the GDP plus larger share of manufacturing of China, double of us. So which means that their manufacturing is significantly larger than us. But now with this COVID pandemic, what has happened is China's, the image of China has got maligned in the eyes of nations because of the way COVID spread and how it originated from there. And on the other hand, uh, we as a country have been extending helping hand to our neighbors, and now we are signing deals with more than 90 countries for supplying them vaccine. So India is supporting countries where China, unfortunately, acted as an aggressor. So we have a great opportunity in terms of manufacturing. We clearly need manufacturing to go up, and that has been the push of the government through the Make in India program, which was announced in 2014, as well as a series of steps which have been taken prior to COVID and a series of steps which have been taken after COVID, including Atmanirbhar, where the idea is that we should be not only self-sufficient, but we should be manufacturing for the world. And I'm going to talk about this again later on and the opportunities that this is going to create for all of us. The government has been using technology to the hilt. It's using data to the hilt. So basically, using technology, using data, it's trying to improve compliance. You must have read recently that using data analytics, the government was able to capture how 850 crores worth of GST revenue was lost by the government, and they were able to recover it back. And this is going to happen more and more. The government is going to focus on compliance. There's not going to be tolerance of non-compliant companies. You must have also read that after demonetization, one of the steps which was also taken was to remove the names of companies which are not complying, which were not filing annual returns, right? So more than 2 lakh companies' names were struck off from companies' register. So there is clearly going to be a premium on compliance. Government is going to use technology in a variety of ways. The returns of income that people file are going to be self-populated automatically based on the database available with the income tax department. But not only that, the government is analyzing the data on even social platforms. So you would be amazed to know that the Prime Minister in one of his speeches said that we at the government are surprised that there are only 20 lakh taxpayers. This was, of course, a couple of years ago. Only 20 lakh taxpayers have declared their income to be 10 lakhs or more. And here, there are 2 crore people who are traveling abroad for tourism. Now, this data can't be reconciled. And therefore, the government is looking at, the posts on social media, for example, to look at the patterns of spends of people. And this is going to be interesting because, the tax evasion which has been happening, I think is going to be coming under bigger and bigger lens. At the same time, the focus is going to be on lowering the taxes, bettering compliance, and the tax buoyancy can actually surprise. In fact, in 2014, when a meeting was called by one of the Rajya Sabha MPs with the current Home Minister, who was not a minister in those days, but was the president of the BJP. So we were 25 of us were invited. And that was the time when Make in India was just announced in September. And in October, I was actually a part of that group which was invited to have a discussion. He couldn't make it, but he had requested one of the other central ministers to come and have a meeting with us. And one of the suggestions I had given was that since we are lacking in terms of infrastructure, and we want Make in India to happen, we have many countries who have far superior infrastructure than us, and we need time to catch up. Then until then, we need to incentivize companies to come and invest in India. And one of the things the government could do is to announce a roadmap, not immediately cut corporate taxes, but announce a roadmap of 10 years, cutting the corporate taxes from 30% to 22% over a period of 10 years, is what I had suggested in October 2014. And in budget of 2015, we did see an announcement of reducing corporate taxes and a roadmap of 5 years to reduce corporate taxes from 30% to 25%. It was not a 10-year roadmap that was announced, but a 5-year roadmap was announced. But even before 10 years, the corporate tax rates have been cut down to 22% 2 years ago. And in fact, those who are going to set manufacturing, in a period of 5 years is going to be even 15%. So the government has taken very aggressive steps to reduce the taxes, but at the same time, ensure that there is proper compliance. So people who are compliant, they are going to actually have wonderful time. You will be recognized as somebody who is contributing to the nation building. But on the other hand, if somebody is evading taxes, then the government is going to come very hard on that. And that is the reason why the number of taxpayers have been a record 6.48 crores who have filed tax returns from a little over 3 crores about 5 to 6 years ago. So in the days to come, we will have lower taxes and higher tax compliance. So that is the framework that I have been seeing over the last several years. So those have been the convictions of the government, and they have been echoed in this particular budget as well. When we talk about some of the provisions in the budget, of course, you will see that some of these aspects have also been echoed there. Now, since we are talking about lower taxes, I must also share with you something which was quoted in the economic survey, which was published 2 days prior to the budget. And you are able to see that at the bottom. What is this? What is the source of this? This source, and I'll read this. This is a Sanskrit verse coming from Mahakavi Kalidas's Raghu Vansham. Raghu Vansham is the Raghu Vansham, as it talks about. It's talking about the Raghu dynasty in which Bhagwan Ram was born. And what was the taxation system in the Raghu dynasty is what this actually explains in this one single verse. And this was quoted in the recent economic survey. And it has something to do with taxes. And it is amazing. My friend Nilesh Oak, who has been doing research on the astronomical evidence from the Ramayana and from the Mahabharata. Unfortunately, they have been called as myths by the colonizers, but actually they are itihas. Itihas means their history. And how they can be proven? They can be proven based on the astronomical evidences, astronomical references, which have been given in Ramayana and in Mahabharata. So my friend Nilesh Oak has found more than 300 references in Mahabharata, which clearly demonstrate that it happened a little over 7,500 years ago. And there are similar references, if not more, in Ramayana, which suggests that Ramayana happened 14,000 years ago. So Raghu Vansham as a dynasty, Raghu dynasty, in which Bhagwan Ram was born, is even ancient than that. And there are names of kings which have been mentioned. So what was the taxation system of these kings from Raghu Vansham? It reads like this: Prajanameva bhutyartham sa tabhyo balimagrahit sahasraguna mustrashtu madatte hi rasam ravihi. Ravi is sun. So how was the tax system? We see that the sun evaporates water from water reservoirs, from ponds, from even sea, from lakes. Taxation should be like this. Taxation should be this. And this is what this taxation system in the Raghu Vansham was that tax was collected in a way that people will not even realize it. It will not cause any hurt to them. Just like the evaporation of water from water reservoirs is not even noticed by us, taxation system in Raghu dynasty was this. But when this tax was collected and it actually went up and they became clouds and they came back and gave rains, those rains are like the benefits that good governance gives back to the society. That rain is bountiful and that rain is noticed by everybody. So while tax collection does not hurt anybody, the bountiful return of those taxes in the form of benefits to the populace is easily noticed, and that is how Raghu Vansham, Mahakavi Kalidas's Raghu Vansham demonstrates or narrates how the taxation system was. That it was for the praja, for the populace, for the benefit of all. So essentially, tax was taken in a way that doesn't hurt anyone, but what comes back is bountiful. And I think that is also the ethos that, reduce the taxes and improve the compliance and give those benefits back to the people who actually deserve. And they are the people at the bottom of the pyramid, because they are the ones who deserve the maximum attention of the government and they should benefit. We'll again see when we come to the budget whether this kind of a sentiment is echoed there or not. But before I go to the budget per se, what were the important steps which were taken before the budget for preparing the ground for the next leap? So there were a few steps which were taken. I have already spoken about this lowering of corporate taxes. Rationalization of GST was also done. 2017, when GST was rolled out 3.5 years ago, the basis of rolling out GST was that whatever was the earlier taxation system, which was excise duty, sales taxes, entry taxes, as was applicable in some states, collectively, whatever was the collective tax, the GST framework should not exceed that tax. So that was the basis on which GST rates were finalized. But we all know that over the later period, the GST rates were actually rationalized and they were brought down. Thus, the overall taxation today is lower than what the taxation was prior to GST. Of course, there have been some hiccups in the GST rollout and system improvements are required. And that is an ongoing phenomena with any system as the new issues, new ways of doing business keep on coming up. And, you need to continue to revamp your systems. But one of the biggest things is this has created one common market across the country, which is absolutely amazing, where earlier we had pockets within one political geography. So this is something which has been done. The improving of ease of doing business in a variety of ways, rationalizing legislation, eliminating unnecessary legislation, improving the availability of electricity, ensuring grievance redressal, ensuring the health of the financial system, the way the governance works. We have all seen how the ease of doing business has improved in India and how India has climbed up the ranks dramatically from an extremely low rank, something like 140 in terms of ease of doing business. We have moved up very, very significantly, and now we have been in the first 50. Now we have still way to go, but there is a significant improvement which has already happened. The other thing which has been done, and this again forms a very important backdrop to this budget, is the insolvency and bankruptcy code to essentially resolve the non-performing asset problem which plagues our banks. So this again was rolled out a couple of years ago, and this is an instrument which is going to help banking institutions to resolve some of the non-performing asset problems. Of course, even here, there are a lot of hiccups, there are a lot of challenges, improvement areas, but I think we are at least creating a mechanism for ensuring that assets which have economic value are retrieved rather than they are allowed to get stagnated. And that's a colossal loss for a developing nation like us. Accelerating infrastructure, roads, railways, airport access, waterways. So this is again, we have already spoken about. The other thing which actually amazed the world is the systematic and determined bid that the country gave to fight against COVID. I created a series of 20 videos in Marathi. They are available in my Marathi channel. And the name of that series was Sankat Kalatil Ruperi Kinar. So Sankat is the time of calamity, but what was the silver lining? So what was the silver lining? I created those 20 videos when we were in the thick of COVID. So my first video happened on March 25, Gudi Padwa Day 2020. And every day I was creating one video. One was about opportunities in the stock market, the opportunity for Indian industry in Africa. There was another video on how our foreign exchange reserves can improve dramatically because the way we are managing COVID, and we will be one of the first countries to recover faster. So there were a series of videos which were created. And at that time, I also created some videos in English. And I have a video on equity investing, which I released on April 4, which can be found on my English channel also. And that's when I said that some of the so-called developed countries took such a lackadaisical approach in fighting COVID. I'll give you examples of Britain and US. Britain, for example, I actually could hear one of the ministers, not the prime minister, but one of the ministers actually talking about allowing what is called as herd immunity to get developed in the community without doing any medical intervention, without enforcing any lockdown, which would mean that let all the economic activity go on. But what could be the cost in terms of human lives? The cost in terms of human lives could be nothing big, but maximum 2 million people could die in UK. Out of a population of 60 million people, the minister could say that, worst that can happen is 2 million people will die, but we don't have to stop in economic activity. We had COVID parties in the US, so celebrating as if we're not going to get buckled down. As a result, what has happened because of this kind of an approach, in fact, somebody in the US was even heard saying that if you were to enforce lockdown, more people will die out of, emotional and mental problems than they will die out of COVID. So they were not sure about what way they would be going ahead. Instead, our government was very firm, saying that we have to go for lockdown because between livelihood and life, we would give more importance to life. And every life is important for us. As a result, we have one of the lowest mortalities in our country for the size where it was predicted that there will be a doom situation in our country. On the other hand, by enforcing lockdowns, we actually delayed the peaking of the virus. And the peak happened only in September. And that was again gradual, well managed. We prepared ourselves in terms of hospital access to many other fronts. And because of that, we have not had the second and third waves. On the other hand, and we already are in the vaccination drive. Whereas the so-called developed nations, after the first wave was over, people thought that there will be second and third wave, which will be minor. On the other hand, what has happened is the second and third waves have been bigger than the first wave. And even today, they are suffering from that. So the way in which our government and our people, with their discipline, have fought against COVID has set an example. And in my series of videos, which I then created, I had said this, that the maturity of our Indian population to respond to the government's clarion call is so high that we will actually come out as a winner. And you can see those videos on my Marathi channel. It's available as a playlist. And I have talked about how working from home is going to create opportunities for India, how that's going to reduce the cost of doing business for us, and how that's going to be wonderful for our country. So it's question of believing in our countrymen and women and believing in the maturity of our people. At the same time, the government did give a targeted support, as I've already mentioned, to certain set of people where it pinched the most. So even migrant workers, they were targeted support, particularly from construction and mining sectors. So now with this background, let's now come to this budget. And therefore, this budget has to be seen in continuum of what I earlier talked about as philosophical aspects of the way the governance has unfolded, as well as some of the steps which have already been taken. So which have been the important things that I noticed as a part of the budget. So in my talk, I'm not burdening you with numbers. And wherever required, I'll talk about those numbers. But more importantly, what appealed to me is the kind of overall vision. And therefore, when Reena ma'am asked me what should be the title of the topic, I gave the same title using the same title that I gave to an article which I wrote in the Maharashtra Times, on the very next day. In fact, I wrote on the same budget day and it was released on the next day. That this is a budget for the next decade. And why do I say this? So let's talk about various aspects. One of the most important things which the government has prioritized is the focus on health, because we all know that people at the bottom of the pyramid suffer when they have a medical calamity in their household. One of the things that has been done already is the Ayushman Bharat, but that is after the event happens, after somebody becomes ill. But why not prevent? So it's not just question of curative, but it is also preventive health, which is very important. And source of water is extremely important for this. So making tap water available both in rural and urban areas in a very targeted way by the end of 2023 to ensure that people have clean water in their house. And once you have clean water, you can actually reduce the mortality rate in very big way. The other thing which has also been done is to create all kinds of medical centers across the geography of the nation, not only in the urban areas but in every nook and corner of the country, so that people have access to good public health centers. They don't have to become vulnerable to exploitation. Though of course, through Ayushman Bharat, there is a mechanism to monitor the hospitalization bills. There is proper record keeping. So many more than 20,000 hospitals have already been registered as a part of Ayushman Bharat. So people have been saved already of a lot of their medical expense burden. But if we want to build the nation, we cannot have sick population. We need to have healthy population. And this is a vision which has been unfolded over the next 5 years. So a very high provision has been done on health itself, for the simple reason that if we address the health issues, just like housing, just like electricity, just like data, then we actually have a very, very healthy population which can meaningfully contribute to not only to their family, but also to the economic progress of the country. This budget, with a capital expenditure program of more than 5.5 lakh crore, has been the most aggressive capital expenditure program ever. So one of the things that, of course, I will talk about a little later is also a very high fiscal deficit. But everybody has welcomed the government's bold move to go for a higher fiscal deficit for this year and also for next year and year following, and use that money for capital expenditure. Now, revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, being students of accounting, we already know that revenue expenditure is on goods and services which get consumed immediately. Capital expenditure is the one which creates assets, which can even be monetized down the line. And those assets can actually help generations. Imagine the road infrastructure, imagine power infrastructure, imagine railway infrastructure, and what wonders it can do for not only a couple of years, but a few decades. So government has rolled out one of the most aggressive capital expenditure program. And when the government opens its purse for capital expenditure program, it also builds confidence of the private enterprise, which has been so far hesitating in making new investments. One reason, of course, has been a legacy issue where a lot of capacity got created after the 2008-2009 crisis. At that time also, a lot of fiscal boost was given. Some of you would remember that in 2008-2009 also, our fiscal deficit was more than 8%. And the government did a lot of things that time to actually boost industry. Now, with the result, there are a few problems which also happened, because they went for massive expansion and that capacity is still not fully utilized. So unless that capacity gets utilized more than 75%, 80%, they're not going to look at reinvestment. But when the government is signaling very clearly that we are going to go ahead with massive capital expenditure, and a lot of that is going to be sourced within the country, the private enterprise also has to get ready to be able to service that demand, because a lot of new orders will get generated. So as it is, more than 7,000 projects have been identified as a part of the national infrastructure pipeline. And those projects and many more are going to be added, which would mean that there will be a very aggressive asset building program which will happen in the country, with the result that our private enterprise also has to respond, and also public sector enterprises who are in this space will have to also respond. And therefore, this has been one of the most aggressive and the massive jump that capital expenditure has been given in 2021-22 as compared to 2020-21 is something remarkable. 5.54 lakh crores of capital expenditure across various ministries. And some of that we will talk about as we go along. Now, one of the problems which obviously the country will face is that when we are expanding our spending, whether it is capital expenditure, whether it is support for the poor, whether it is health, where do we get this money from in the context where the corporate taxes have already been reduced? Personal income tax last year was already reduced. Wherever one is not availing of deductions, the 30% tax slab kicks off only after the income crosses 15 lakhs. So the government is in no mood to increase taxes. So where do you get this shortfall from? And that shortfall is going to come from aggressive disinvestment campaign and asset unlocking program. So asset monetization program. So what does that mean? There are a lot of assets, land banks, companies which were formed many decades ago, but which are rotting. They're not actually, doing meaningful work. So get rid of many of those public sector enterprises and particularly the land banks that they have so that we are able to raise this money. So the government has targeted something like 1,75,000 crores to be raised out of this disinvestment program. And one of the most remarkable ones is the disinvestment of not fully, but share sale of Life Insurance Corporation, which is the largest fund manager in the country, whose funds or the funds that they manage are equivalent to the funds being managed by the entire mutual fund industry. So there is a tremendous value of LIC's fund management capacity. And when there is a certain disinvestment which is done, there will be huge unlocking of that value. Plus, the government will get certain receipts which can be used to fill up the fiscal deficit. So this has been one of the most ambitious, like Margaret Thatcher did that in UK in 1979. So it is, I wouldn't say it's fully a Thatcher movement in our country, but we are moving in that direction where the government is saying that it is not the government's business to be in business where it need not be. So the government can withdraw and create space for private enterprise and who can do it very efficiently. And the government will have to act as a referee, whether to ensure competition, whether to ensure fair play, whether to ensure participation of wider number of participants in a particular market. So all that is the role of the government and which will continue. However, the government need not be in the business, and therefore it has also talked about selling one of the privatization of one of the general insurance companies and two of the public sector banks. For the benefit of students, students may not be aware about this, but if you go back to the history of many of those so-called public sector banks today, they were actually private sector banks once upon a time. And in 1969, they were converted into public sector banks. So we are now going back to the private sector. What is known today as Air India was Tata Airlines once upon a time, and that got nationalized. So what we are doing is we are again giving opportunity for the private players to come back. So that has been a major shift and a very aggressive shift at that. Creating infrastructure needs funding, and for that we need institutional framework. And again, for the benefit of students, of course, our esteemed faculty members are already aware about this. Once upon a time, we had what is called as development financial institutions, which were later on converted into banks. So ICICI, IDBI were actually formed under separate acts of parliament. So there was an ICICI Act, if I remember right, of 1956. There was an IDBI Act around the same time. There was an IFCI Act. Later on, they got converted into companies and then they got converted into banks. So we today are going back and saying that we need, there is a proper institution which is needed to finance infrastructure. And the government has talked about creating one. And also we need to deepen what is called as debt markets. Our equity markets are very deep. We also have, some of you must have also read that NSE's derivatives turnover is the largest in the world among any exchanges, right? So basically we already have very deep markets in that space, but our corporate debt market needs to deepen further. and there is a lot of opportunity for foreign investors to come in, domestic investors to go in. And you must have also read the recent RBI monetary policy, where they have now talked about, RBI has talked about that even retail investors can now invest in government bonds. They don't have to necessarily go through a mutual fund. They can directly buy the government bonds through RBI. So, so there is clearly a need for deepening the debt markets, and there is an effort being made in that direction. While certain private sector banks, rather public sector banks, may get privatized, but the remaining ones, which the government is going to continue, they need to be strengthened. And also there is this idea, though of course it was not called as such in the speech, the budget speech of the Honorable Finance Minister, but later on she did use that word in another interview, where there was this talk about bad bank. So what is bad bank? A bad bank will take over all the bad assets from various public sector banks, pool them together and resolve them to the best of their ability, and they free the banks to be able to again lend money to the enterprise. So we clearly need freedom to the banks, and we need capital availability to be able to kick off lending once again in the system. It doesn't mean reckless lending, but it only means that none of our SMEs should be starved for funds as we go back to the recovery path. So this is something which is very, very important. The other thing which is also very important for an educational institution like you, and a reference was made to that, is the national education policy. So national education policy implementation will also get unfolded in the days to come. But one of the things that got echoed in the budget speech was that 15,000 model schools will be developed, which will act in a kind of a hub and spoke kind of a model, where each of the model school will be the hub, and it will create benefits for various schools in its vicinity. There has been an announcement for what is called as Sainik schools. There has been an announcement for people from the tribal areas from a residential school perspective. So there are many nuances of this. There has been a specific reference to a new university being set up in the Union Territory of Ladakh. So in Leh, there's going to be a central university which is going to come up. So the national education policy will also start getting unfolded now in the days to come. And a college like you, which is already putting so much of effort to make a mark, is obviously, it's a great opportunity for an institution like you to make your mark. And it's going to be building healthy competition. Like ma'am was talking about a healthy competition among ourselves, among various, kind of groups within the college. Here also, there's going to be a healthy competition in terms of, raising the bar, and that's going to be very, very good. Recently, we have been experiencing certain farmer protests. One can debate whether there is a merit in that or otherwise. But one of the specific references which was brought by the finance minister was the kind of and the magnitude of MSP support. MSP is the minimum support price for food grains, and the amount of support which the government has given. So in 5-6 years, in some of these cases where the MSP procurement was less than 100 crores, it has now risen to more than 20,000 crores, whether it is in pulses, or whether it is in paddy, or whether it is in wheat. So it has grown manifold, and the specific reference was brought by the finance minister for this reason on the backdrop of the recent protests which are happening. There was also has been this apprehension that the entire framework of what is called as Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee, APMC, is going to be dismantled. But on the contrary, the finance minister has said that another 1,000 APMCs will be brought in as a part of the e-market for agricultural produce, which has been created, with the result that the farmer will be empowered to make a choice of which mandi or which mechanism to go and sell. And this market access is very important because unfortunately, the model of agriculture which has got developed is a very high cost model. High dose of fertilizers, high dose of insecticides and pesticides. The kind of inputs which go in are expensive, and that has unfortunately resulted into farmer suicides and so on. And so therefore, there is a need to at least make access available to the farmer, so that the farmer is not deprived of a rightful price. Plus, there is a need for an MSP support so that in case the agricultural is not getting sufficient price, one is able to at least procure goods from them and ensure that they are able to meet their livelihood. Similarly, there are going to be a lot of streamlining of securities laws. So there are many legislations right now which have an overlap. So Securities Contract Regulation Act and others. So they are going to be streamlined into a securities market code, and that will eliminate the overlaps, that will eliminate the conflicts of regulations, and that will also contribute to the ease of doing business. One other thing so this word has not been used by the finance minister, but if you read between the lines and the amount of capital expenditure which has been projected for railways. So for the railways, more than 1 lakh crore of capital expenditure has been planned in the very next year. But not only that, if you actually see what is going to happen to the railway system of India over next decade, you'll actually find that the entire railway system may get revamped, whether it is freight, whether it is passenger, whether it is the amenities, whether it is the new corridors, the entire railway system as supplemented by the urban transport, not only just the conventional metro system, but less expensive alternative modes of, revamp that we are seeing, making it relevant for industry. Over next, sorry, I think I got disconnected. So let me. Hello, is my screen visible? Can I get a feedback, please?
Sir, it's visible now. For the last maybe 1 or 2 minutes, we couldn't hear you.
Okay,
It
okay,
is now visible.
okay, okay. So I think I was talking about the reimagining of the railway system. I think perhaps that's where I got lost.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, correct, correct. So basically what we will see over next push to manufacturing, which is going to happen, about which I will be making more references as I unfold this slide. So here clearly there was a challenge for the government, whether on the backdrop of COVID situation, whether to control the expenses or push for growth. And the trade-off was clearly in favor of growth. That even it means that we have to actually keep aside a bit the fiscal conservatism. What I mean, government has said we will come back to the conservatism part in a couple of years, but for now, let's go for aggressive growth. That's what the message of this budget has been. And that's how in this year, 9.5% of the fiscal deficit, next year 6.8%, gradually tapering down to 4.5% is what has been envisaged. And clearly the preference has been given to growth. So the next point is very important, because where we have lost out over last several decades is that once upon a time we had a strong manufacturing. At the time of independence also we had very strong defense manufacturing. And it is a shame that until recently, until 2019, we were the biggest arms importer in the world. Now we have been dethroned by Saudi Arabia last. Until then, we were the biggest arms importer. And now there are green shoots that are visible, where now we have become among the top 20 defense exporters. So that is actually showing a shift. And there is clearly a need to focus on domestic R&D. And therefore, the budget has also made an interesting announcement of National Research Foundation. And I'll give you examples of two companies which have invested heavily in their own domestic R&D. One is Bajaj Auto, another is TVS. So what these two companies did, something different than many other companies, was that they did not restrict their campus interviews to only top tier engineering colleges. They went across colleges, across tiers, and they said, it doesn't matter to us whether our candidates are able to speak chaste English. But what matters to us is that how good they are in technology and how passionate they are in research. And they actually picked up jewels from remotest place, conducting interviews in Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, all kinds of languages to pick up these people and develop domestic R&D. Now today we have a situation where Bajaj Auto, which is the dominant player in our country or one of the dominant players, is a leading bike seller in more than 17 countries. They are either in the number one position or in number two position. And their bikes are sold at significantly more price than the Chinese competition, but yet they have a dominant market share because of the technology and what is called as the overall low cost of ownership over the life of a motorcycle. So while a Chinese motorcycle will be cheap to buy, but it is very expensive to maintain and it will have more downtime, whereas a Bajaj or a TVS bike is more robust. Even if you have to pay a larger sum right now, it is very cheap to maintain. It has access to parts and so on. So our companies have been able to demonstrate what they can do if they strategize in an appropriate way. And clearly we have to position ourselves as a manufacturing destination for the world. And not only in this budget, but some of the announcements that I've already talked about, we are now trying to position ourselves as the manufacturing hub. And the recent aero kind of the exhibition which happened in Bengaluru is also going to showcase our defense, particularly aeronautics capabilities, and that's going to attract investment around the world. One of the announcements which was also done before the budget was 74% investment opportunity in defense joint ventures for foreign players. That's very important. They need to manufacture within the country. And defense is one business where there's a lot of spillover benefit that happens across various sectors in the industry. And we also have our own strength in software. And today, most of the defense products have not only just hardware content, but a significant software content where we have a capability. And that's where we can make a mark, in terms of manufacturing. Lastly, clearly the government is wanting to create more and more space for private enterprise. So we have moved away from socialistic ideals where we want to just distribute the size of the cake as it is to clearly expanding the cake. And that's where the private enterprise can play a very important role. And what we mean by private enterprise is not just the large giants of Indian industry, but the SMEs and the new entrepreneurs. So those can contribute in a big way. And we are seeing now that Bengaluru has already become the top three startup hub around the world. And more such centers are taking shape. So friends, in 1991, when the Narasimha Rao government created the liberalization, globalization, privatization momentum in 1991, that time Indian industry was scared of foreign takeovers. So there was a club called as Bombay Club, which was formed by some of the Indian industrialists, that they were extremely concerned that they would be taken over and they will be out of business. But then luckily the IT industry made a mark globally. Y2K, which is year 2000, provided an opportunity and the world noticed India's prowess. So with that, a lot more businesses came into the country. BPO came, KPO came, back offices came, and everybody came to India and started investing in India. And that's where the manufacturing capability and the technology and the to companies around the world where the designing part is done in India, but the manufacturing may happen abroad. So clearly, I think the message of the budget is that we have built our expertise, we have demonstrated our expertise in services, but clearly this is time that India establishes itself as a or takes the manufacturing center stage. That is the time which has come, and that is what we will see unfold in the next decade with all kinds of initiatives, right from education policy to the focus on health, to focus on infrastructure, to health of the financial institutions. What we are trying to do is converge all our capabilities towards creating more and more opportunities in manufacturing. The speech of the finance minister did not directly focus on manufacturing per se, but I think if you read between the lines, the focus to me was very clear that we need to create India as a manufacturing hub once again. So I think with that, I will, I think I have been within my time of about 1 hour. And with that, I would like to thank all of you for having thought of me. Um, I would again thank Professor Ainapure for recommending my name, and I would like to thank all of you to have extended a warm welcome to me. I wish all of you, as well as all the students of this institution, which you are trying to build through your hard work and toil and creativity and enterprise. I think you are all enterprising yourself. So with that, I'm sure things are going to be very bright for your institution and for all your students. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation to you. I hope it brought certain value and perspectives. So if you have found any limitations, they're all mine, but I tried my best within that 1 hour to, kind of convey my thoughts. And now, Vijayji, therefore, I can tell you why I'm 90% invested in equities, because I'm India. So thank you very much once again.
Abhijitji sir, I am a very small investor. I do not know much about, but I do take interest and I like to study companies and companies' performance. That is my hobby.
Yes.
I'm not a very big investor. I prefer rather now at this age, 59 plus, I go via mutual fund route rather than just directly
Okay.
investing.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, you would like to say something, Principal Madam?
It was a mind blowing. I mean, you have entirely touched upon the entire aspect of the budget presentation. From the educationist point of view, I was, just little worried about. We are all from the education field. We are all, I think, worried that how now at present we have more than around 800 universities, and we have around 45,000 colleges across India. So how it is going to be, bringing down to 15,000 institutions? That's what one thing which we are not very clear about. New education policy is on paper, definitely it is a very wonderful idea. But how it is going to be practically implemented, which we from the education field are bit worried about it. I don't know whether you can put some light in this aspect through in the form of that budget, connecting the budget with the education. They want to say 6% of GDP they want to bring into the education institute. I think the more focus the government is giving is to develop the skill university they are coming out with. And at the same time, there are instances where, before the start of the university, only the Institution of Eminence Award also has been given, which is very clearly visible to all of us. So how it is going to be happening in the education field, this subsidies and grants and etc. That's what we are very, very concerned about it. So
Right.
if you can throw some light on it, I would be.
Right. So budget has not made explicit references to the entire gamut of the NEP, how is going to be rolled out. Where the focus was, again, was not on the institutions of higher education, except there was a reference to the Central University in Leh. But the 15,000 institutions that I talked about was more at the school level. So those 15,000, what they are talking about is, and there was a reference to NEP, I'm sure you are all aware, is they want to create clusters whereby you have a model school and you have, because it's very difficult to build skill set in every school. It's very difficult. But if you are able to create a certain number of schools which are already doing well, and if you're able to recognize them, uh, you you give them a responsibility of not only bettering the students in that institution, but you also create a hub and spoke model whereby that model school starts contributing to that cluster around it. And therefore, like I think some of the initiatives as an accredited institution, you are also able to partner with some of the colleges and you're able to take certain initiatives jointly or in a cluster form. The reference was more at the school level. I
Sir,
didn't,
I think, I mean, sorry to interrupt.
not at all.
Even the reference is made for the colleges also.
Okay.
Institutions, when they mention, the cluster concept is also coming out. Say, for example, now HSNC, this HR college, KC college, they have formed a university. It is called Cluster University.
Right.
So that idea is coming in a big way. And that was possible because it was the colleges were under the same management. But you
Right.
know, the institutions run by different managements to come together and do it. So we also don't have a clear cut idea about it. We are
Right.
ready to accept the challenges. If it has to do it, we have to accept it. We are
Yes.
ready to accept the challenges. It's a great challenge in front of all the higher educational
Yes.
institutions as well.
Yes.
And also the other point is even the budget also speaks about research foundation.
Yes.
Government is going to come a big way to support research. So that is also very welcome, you know, thing
Absolutely.
for the educational institutions as
Yes. Yes.
well. Overall, it is a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I mean, we have got an overall idea about how it is going to be
Okay.
happening. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was wonderful, sir. Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I would like to be associated with you, or rather, I would request you to be associated with our institution. How we can, you can help us to grow, you know, our institution's growth in the growth strategy, you know, if you can
Right.
help us, I would be more than happy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sindhu, I think any
Yes, ma'am.
question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for such an astute and sharp take on the budget, especially analyzing it from a macroeconomic point of view. It has indeed been quite an enlightening experience for all of us. And, sir, what I found most endearing about your session is that you started the session by talking about your failures. Not many people would do that, sir. In fact, I'm sure many of us would like you to conduct another session for us someday just so that we learn how you overcame your failures and set an example for all of us to follow. Especially, I personally would also like to know how you retain your humility and modesty despite all your achievements. Thank you so much, sir. And sir, with your permission, can I forward? I mean, can I ask you a few questions which the participants
Of
have
course.
raised? Of course,
Of
because of
course.
paucity of time, I will limit the questions to maybe 5. But
Yes.
if
Yes.
you're okay, can I ask?
Of course. Of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Sir, one question we have got is what improvement do you think the government could have introduced in this budget? Some drawback, something which they could have done, but they didn't do.
Right. What I would have definitely expected was that, particularly there are a couple of sectors in the economy where the hurt because of COVID has been far more severe. And those sectors include particularly travel and tourism, hospitality, where, there are a lot of small entrepreneurs who are also involved in that. Think that the government has done targeted support of individuals. I think this was an opportunity. What they could have also done is solicited, creating of such a database and then supporting those, specific businesses, particularly those which have, small enterprises or even some of the large hotel chains or airlines. I would have imagined that some specific support from the government was warranted, because they also have to stay afloat while they are private enterprises, but they also provide vital service to the country. Imagine an airline, if it shuts down because of the pressures of its cost, and the entire pressure is passed on to the employees in terms of reduced salaries, that's not fair. I mean, to some extent, salary reduction in that sector is understandable. However, it's not fair that the entire burden is kind of borne by them. So I would have imagined a certain targeted support to specific sectors. Of course, things are now improving gradually. Many of them are getting business, but apart from the credit support which was given in terms of giving them more time to repay, uh, I think financial support could have also been done, which personally I felt would have been a good idea, but I don't think that has been done. So I think that I see as something that could have been an improvement area.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So one more question is, with so much awareness of climate change in discussion these days, has the budget contributed in some way to climate preservation or not?
As far as I remember, there have not been very direct references to environmental protection. However, there is one important announcement which has been done in the context of health, and I'm sure in the context of environment, is the voluntary deregistration of private vehicles after they cross 20 years. So what happens is we have more than 30-40 lakhs of vehicles which have already crossed 20 years of age, and they are still plying on the roads. Now that creates an environmental hazard. Our government has made, not as a part of this budget, but earlier, very aggressive commitments in terms of reducing the carbon footprint. And from that perspective, this is an announcement which has been made, so that polluting vehicles should go off the roads. So they are going to create test centers where it's an automated test mechanism for testing a vehicle, and if it doesn't meet those standards, it has to be re-registered after 20 years. That is one step. The other steps which have also been taken, and about which budget did not make specific references, but a lot of references have come earlier, and those references have been particularly in the context of, yes, there is one more, I must mention that. So I think I'll come back to this part of my answer again. But there is an interesting reference to National Hydrogen Mission. What is this hydrogen mission? Basically, imagine a vehicle running on hydrogen as a fuel. What will be the output of a hydrogen driven vehicle? The output of hydrogen vehicle is going to be H2O, which is water. So imagine, instead of you getting gases out of the nozzle, you actually get water or water vapor out. What is it going to do to environment? It's going to do wonders. So while it has not been elaborated a lot, this National Hydrogen Mission is a seed in that direction. Now, if you look at hydrogen technology, there are two routes to hydrogen technology. One route to hydrogen technology is based on hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbon is the same industry from which we get all the oil products, whether it is petrol and diesel. So we can actually get hydrogen from that route also. And there is another route from which we can get hydrogen, which is from natural resources, from vegetation. And one of the important references which has been made in this budget is the effort of this National Hydrogen Mission would be to focus on the natural resources and from which one can obtain hydrogen. Imagine what will happen to vehicles. We have already been talking about electrical vehicles, but the problem with electrical vehicles also is that while it reduces the consumption of hydrocarbon, it does not necessarily reduce the environmental footprint, because how to dispose of batteries is also one of very big challenges. Of course, perhaps some of you may have seen videos. I forget the names of these two sisters, but if you just do Google search, there are two wonderful sisters, very young, in their 20s. They have created a battery which is going to have ingredients which can easily go back to the environment. Apart from the shell, the shell will have the same standard shell as an electronic battery, but the internal components are all recyclable. Now that's going to be a revolution. But another important reference I would bring, because that's why I said that budget today is no longer necessarily the only place where new direction is given. I'll make two interesting references which happened before the budget. Some of you may have read this, but there is going to be a fillip which is given to gobar-based paint industry. Now, using the cow dung, paint can be created, and that can be 60,000 crores of business. So imagine paint industry which is based on hydrocarbons versus paint industry which is based on naturals. Similar another important impact which can happen is in the context of the oil imports that we do. The government is clearly focusing on bio options, biodiesel, and some of you may have also read about a SpiceJet aircraft which flew on substantially bio fuel. So those technologies are going to be proven. So while apart from the hydrogen mission and apart from these passenger vehicles being shunted out, there are some steps which have been taken prior to the budget itself, and that is going to be focused. So we have to look at budget as a continuum, unlike in the past where budget would typically be the time of communication from the government. Here, communication is ongoing. So there is a huge difference which has happened historically and now. So that we need to keep an eye on. So I hope I have given response to this question, Sindhu ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for such a comprehensive reply to the question. Sir, one question I would like to ask on a personal capacity also. Sir, with the higher government borrowing estimated in the budget, are we looking at any pressure on the inflation or on the interest rate?
Yes, I think it's a very pertinent question, Sindhu ma'am, and the response from the bond market was immediate. Just like Vijayji said, the response from the stock market was also immediate. But the response of bond market and the stock market was exactly opposite. So while the stock market surged, the bond market fell. And that's exactly happened because of the concern that you have raised. So the bond yields, which were before the budget around 5.95%, have now reached 6.15%. And higher the yield, lower the bond prices. So the bond market has already reacted because of the aggressive borrowing that the government would be doing. But simultaneously, as the RBI has been doing during the COVID times, I'm sure the RBI will have to also support the bond market down the line. Because what is happening is, interestingly, there are going to be two opposing forces which are going to happen. And how the RBI balances is something that we need to see. Because when RBI goes to buy bonds from the market, it actually injects liquidity in the system. Now, on the other hand, the other problem is when we have more and more foreign exchange coming into the country, when RBI buys that foreign exchange, again, it injects liquidity. So as Sindhu madam had rightly pointed out, if you have so much of injection of liquidity in the system, it can be inflationary. And that is something we clearly need to watch. So your concern is absolutely valid. And the other issue also would be that what happens to the commodity prices internationally, particularly to oil. So while I personally feel that oil is in a bear market, if you see from a long-term structural trend perspective, there is a counter-cyclical trend right now where oil prices are going to rise for some more time. And that's a bad news for us as a country because higher the oil price, higher the oil bill for us. So $1 extra price that we pay in the international markets means about 1.2 to 1.4 billion dollars for us. So during the thick of COVID pandemic, oil prices had crashed to early 20s and now they have risen to $58, $59. So that costs a lot more for us. So that is a cyclical, counter-cyclical trend which currently we are experiencing. But if you see from a long-term perspective, oil is clearly in a bear market, which means oil prices from a long-term perspective are going to fall because of many other technologies which are emerging for transportation. So that being the case, clearly we as a country stand to benefit. But as Sindhu ma'am rightly mentioned, clearly there is going to be a challenge over next 1 year or so. And therefore, as an investor, though I'm not in the profession of investment advice, but anybody who asks me about investment advice, I've been telling them to stay away from bonds for some time because of this very reason and the very worry that Sindhu ma'am expressed that higher inflation could mean higher interest rates and higher interest rates would mean lower bond prices. So it is not prudent to invest in bonds, but it is prudent to invest in shares. So we need to be aware about how things impact on asset prices as well.
Abhijit ji, sir ji,
Yes, sir.
you may not be knowing about Sindhu madam's past. She is a former banker. She has come from IDBI. She was an officer with IDBI for so many years, and it is IDBI's loss. She decided to quit and join the profession. So it is our gain, sir.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sir,
So, Sindhu
actually,
ma'am, did I answer your question adequately, or
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And in
did I
fact,
fail the
Suchak sir,
test?
no, Suchak sir just now, said what I was about to say, sir. I come from a DFI background. So I
Right.
wanted to know that you spoke about a 20,000 crore being set aside for setting up DFI. We know how IDBI and ICICI finally ended up. They had to be converted into banks. So my last question to you is, then what is the point of setting up another DFI when we know from past experiences that we have not had much success with DFIs?
Right. So I think since you come from the banking background, the earlier division across commercial banks and development financial institutions was that banks would essentially finance working capital, and DFIs would essentially finance capital expenditure. Um, Here, I think our Indian industry today is by and large on its own in terms of financing, whether it comes to its capital expenditure programs or whether it comes to working capital financing. So the earlier division between DFIs and banks was more for the industry per se, not for the infrastructure directly. So if you see ICICI or IDBI, to which you belong, it was Industrial Development Bank of India. It was not focused on infrastructure financing, whereas the new structure which will be created will be focused on infrastructure financing as opposed to capital expenditure of companies. So for capital expenditure financing, you have commercial banks who are already now moved into term loans and financing capital expenditure apart from working capital finance. But the new institution, in my view, is not going to focus on capex of companies because now they have access to global markets, unlike the time of IDBI and IFC. I remember I had done some work for IDBI on behalf of Lowlock and Lewis about 25 years ago, where IDBI used to channel, if I remember right, and you can confirm my memory, is that IDBI was channeling foreign currency loans for Indian industry, right? But now
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Indian industry can directly source foreign currency loans, and today the foreign currency loans that we have, significant portion of the foreign currency loans are on account of Indian corporates, not because of the Indian government's loans. So that being the case, I think as far as capex programs of companies are concerned, we don't any longer need any other financial institution. But that financial institution, in my view, is more for infrastructure financing than capex alone.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think we will end with the question answer round. My apologies to the participants whose questions were not addressed today. But since we are running out of time, I will just end the question answer round now. Um, no program of our college can be complete without a vote of thanks by our beloved Vice Principal of Self-Finance Section, Dr. Mona Mehta. Personally, for me, every time I've heard her speak, I've mentally made notes on how a perfect vote of thanks should be. And what makes it even more endearing is the calm and serene manner in which it is delivered. I now request Mona ma'am to kindly deliver the vote of thanks for a perfect end to a wonderful evening. Mona ma'am.
Thank you, Sindhu. It was indeed a delight listening to such a learned authority on various fields of life. Dr. Abhijit Fatnis, it was fantastic having you amongst us. Sir, I feel the number 3 is very lucky for you. You were a 3-time ranker. You took a hat trick and you divided your presentation into 3 parts. First, you started with why the conviction that the government had, then the pre-work for the budget, and finally you went on to the budget. For me, the 3 most memorable things about your address to us were talking about removing miseries of others that you wrote on your wall. It's fantastic, a thought to carry with us. Second, that you quoted, America became rich not because of the richness it has, but because of the infrastructure it created. And third, I really hope tax becomes easy to give like vapor, and when we don't notice it. These were really memorable parts of the address that you gave us on the budget 2021. You, of course, highlighted how the budget can shape and change the life, whether it comes to health, education, aggressive capital expenditure that the government is going to do, and the fruits that we will reap in the future. Thank you so much, sir, for using your left and right side of the brain and making something that is so complex, like the budget, easy to understand for right side brain people too. We often talk about the budget. Maybe the finance students and faculties enjoy it, but the non-finance students struggle with it. But I think you catered to both the needs. So it was brilliant having you. I think something that I should add also. So this is the first time you're coming to the college. So you have 2 more times to come to the college more. Sindhu ma'am has already invited you for one session on how you overcame failures in your life. I think we'll create one more session for you to be amongst us.
Sure.
Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you.
The management of Nagindas Khandwala College is always supporting new endeavors, so I would like to thank the management. Principal Dr. Mrs. Nancy Jose for giving us autonomy. Sir, something that you discussed today of minimum government and maximum governance, I think this is what Principal Madam believes in. Our vice principals, Professor V.G. Suchar and Professor Dr. Moshmi Datta, for keeping focus on growth, never letting us drift from a very important part, that is growth. The HOD of the Accountancy Department, CA Harish Godia, for creating this platform for us. The budget, maybe we understood part of it, did not understand part of it, but they made sure we are educated about it today. So thank you, the entire accountancy department, for creating this opportunity. And of course, it would not have been possible without the support of our adjunct professor, Dr. Varsha Ainapuri ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for getting sir amongst us. CA Reena Desai gave a lovely introduction of the speaker today. Thank you, Reena ma'am, for that introduction. Sindhu Menon, who has worked in the banking sector, kept us binded today. And I think you handled the question answer round brilliantly, Sindhu. Congratulations for that. Ankita, who is a part of the department, I'm sure must have chipped in too. So a big thanks to Ankita. Joe Biden said a lovely thing about budget. He said, don't tell me what you value. Show me the budget and I'll tell you what you value. And I think, sir, this is what you brought to light when you spoke about the budget today. Our faculties of Nagindas Khandwala College are always working hard to develop skills in their students and working harder to give them this entrepreneurial spirit. So thank you, dear faculty members, for taking out time to attend this session. Student volunteers, thank you for the technical support that you have rendered, and all the participating students. Budget and money go hand in hand. So I would like to give you a money tip today before we end the day today. Sir, if I may, I mean, with your qualifications, me giving a money tip sounds wrong, but I still feel like giving this money tip. The safe way to double your money is to fold your note and keep it back in your pocket, so you have your money saved. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and save money.
Thank you so much, Mona ma'am, especially for the wonderful tip you gave at the end. And with this, with sir's permission, we would like to end the meeting. Sir, can we?
Yes, of course.